Hello, and welcome to a brand new season of the Extreme Sports Performance Podcast. My name's Ryan Blake, I'm the founder and CEO of Extreme Sports Performance. In this 13th episode, I'm going to be speaking to John Wood. John is a swim and a triathlon coach I've known for many years. I'm going to be asking the questions I ask all my guests: who he is, what he does, where has he come from, and what has he done along the way? What are the key moments from his career so far? What are his top areas of interest? What are the most valuable things he's learnt? Who are his top influencers? What are his top resources for information? What are his top 3 performance exercises and or drills? What are his top pieces of advice in life, exercise and or sport? And finally, where can people find him? We continue to freestyle in between questions like normal. Really enjoyed recording this one. Hope you enjoy listening to it. Here we go. So, John, thanks for joining us today on the Extreme Sports Performance Podcast. Please, can you start by telling everyone a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you do?
Okay, so thank you, Ryan. My name's John Wood. I'm 32 and I'm coaching in Bristol. I run my own sports coaching business, so I coach triathlon, swimming and running. I've been coaching swimming for about 16 years and triathlon for 8. And I raced at international level as a swimmer and age group level for triathlon. I still kind of do a little bit of both at a master's level, so age group level 30, like I say, I'm 32, so racing against people of my age. And it's something that it's always given me a great deal of satisfaction being able to help people enjoy sport and achieve more in it now, because I've enjoyed so much of it myself.
Fantastic. Would you mind just kind of giving us a little bit of a brief history of what first got you into it, and then the steps along the way, and what you would probably say were key moments from your kind of pathway?
So I learned to swim like a lot of people do at 4 or 5, because I grew up near the Grand Union Canal and my parents said, well, you have to learn to swim. There was no option with it, and I didn't really enjoy it to start with. And after a couple of terms of doing it, I haven't moved through the levels. I enjoyed it, joined a local swimming club. And from 7 through to 20, basically, I raced at national level, international level, and really enjoyed just it being in the water. I think there's a real piece that comes with being in the water. I've an affinity with it. My coach paid for me to get my coaching qualification, or my first coaching qualifications at 16, and that was, I guess it's cheap labour for him, but I think the biggest thing for him was that it meant that as an athlete, I definitely understood what was going on in the water better. The old adage, if you can teach somebody to do something, you understand it better, really rang true. And it's something that I still, when I'm in the pool or while I'm running now, I'm always thinking, how can I transfer skills to people who don't necessarily have that understanding, who don't necessarily have that body awareness. So there's quite a nice synergy with just training and being able to coach it as well. I went to triathlon after university, and I've been coaching full time now for 5 years. In fact, 5 years next month, and there's a real freedom with it, to be honest. It's been growing all the time, and it's changing. And I'm coaching at all levels. I'm coaching people who are completely scared of the water, and then I work with a para-triathlete, Andy Lewis, who won gold in Rio. So it's always keeping me on my toes.
Fantastic. So obviously you've experienced every kind of different level, really, from grassroots up to kind of Olympic, elite, world class level. What would you say would be kind of the key moments or the key experiences that you've had so far since you've been involved in this?
I think the key moments, or one of them really has to have been going full time as a coach. It's a real step into the unknown, and it takes a lot of self-confidence and awareness in your own ability. And I've got to blow my own trumpet. I'd like to think I'm reasonably good at what I do. There are other good coaches out there, of course. I'm not going to say I'm the best one out there, but I know that I can get my point across. And with the support of my then partner, I got going with running the business. But actually, it's just confidence to know that what I'm telling people works, and then to get the feedback from them. That really does generate a lot of positivity. I think actually one of the courses I did with you was really useful for me as well. Is it Dan Brown, the Australian strength coach? I can't remember.
Dan Baker.
Dan Baker, that's the one. He doing that was a really good moment for me, because I was actually able to pick up a lot from different sports. Obviously, doing the course that I did was about 4 years ago, I think, 3-4 years ago. Picking up skills and knowledge from people who were maybe football coaches or rugby coaches or cricket coaches was really big in my understanding of how I can get my points across to different athletes, because beyond 2 or 3 of my athletes that I coach, most of them are normal everyday people. They're not elite athletes. Most of them have got skills or backgrounds in different sports. So if I can get my point across in a way that they understand, they will retain skills, as you know. And I think picking up skills and picking up information from different coaches was a real shift for me. And then I guess the third key moment actually was just from a pure marketing point of view was Andy winning his Paralympic gold in Rio in 2016, because it looks good on the CV. I'm not his only coach, and he's the one who's gone and put in all the work, but it's nice to have that as a label by my name, really, I suppose.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really interesting, John. I always like to ask people that, because everyone's always got a different answer.
Yeah.
And which course was that with Dan Baker? Was that the velocity-based training course?
That was, yes.
Yeah, at the Oval.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that. That was a really good couple of days, actually. I really enjoyed that myself. Awesome. So, as I suppose a triathlon specialist, or a specific coach for a sport, what would you say at the moment your top 3 areas of interest are that kind of help you to do your day-to-day kind of job?
I think the first thing is skill acquisition. It's really interesting looking at different ways for people to understand things and how people learn. And I'm looking to develop something myself to help people learn remotely, because there is such a large percentage of people who don't know how to swim and find the water intimidating. And so if I can help people learn to swim remotely, or give people confidence to swim, then it means their time in the water becomes a lot more enjoyable. And if time in the water is more enjoyable, then they're more likely to want to spend time in the water, at which point, hopefully, fingers crossed, they'll learn better and learn quicker and progress quicker. So that's probably the biggest area of interest for me at the moment, and reading various different books from various coaches. The next area of interest is strength and conditioning. It's not something that I particularly have qualifications in, because it's not my area of expertise, but it's a real key with dealing with endurance athletes. And again, you dealing with strength and conditioning probably see this more than I do, that endurance athletes don't like doing strength. But just working on, again, how I can encourage people, how I can make things fun, how I can how can make it interesting and get people to see the benefits of it. And I use a lot of these skills myself as well, because I enjoy lifting weights, I enjoy doing the strength work, and I see the benefit. And I guess I can use myself as a case subject, a test subject for people to be able to see. And the more people who are seeing the benefits of it, the better. Whether it's because I can publish, can share and post things, or whether it's because people can see their friends get the benefits from it. Mm-hmm. And then I'm always going to have the interest in swimming as a whole and how to further improve people's understanding of that and people's confidence and comfortability around it all.
I sometimes have experienced, it's almost like when you say strength and conditioning to some endurance athletes or athletes from sport which strength and conditioning isn't such a foundation concept, it's quite a new thing. It's often like they look like you're swearing at them. And I've often found it's purely just because of a lack of understanding, really, and it's like a lack of education. And there's almost a little bit of a fear factor or an intimidation factor.
Yes, definitely.
And I found that over with lots of different sports, lots of different track and field sports, and particularly like lots of different action sports or ultra endurance outdoor pursuit sports that I've worked with over the last year. Just trying to slowly educate them on the benefits and why doing something is going to help them. And I've always found if you can link the solution to them getting better and them improving, they're always going to eventually buy in. But you can't really rush the process, can you? You just have to take time to allow them to feel comfortable first.
Yes.
And then once they feel comfortable, understand it, it's a little bit easier to sell, and they kind of take it up on themselves more.
Yeah, I think the other thing is, and this was something that was mentioned to me, not for me personally, but as a bit of learning when I was doing some business coaching, was about selling the benefits to the athlete rather than the features.
Exactly.
And we as coaches can get really stuck in what it is that we're getting people to do and why, but actually, for most people, when they get a limit of, 5, 6, 8 hours a week to do training, 10 hours maybe if they're lucky, then actually they want to know that it'll have an impact, where it'll have an impact very quickly. And if you can say you'll have less injuries or fewer injuries, if you can say you'll have more power and you'll be able to potentially run shorter and still run the same speed, or run fewer times in a week and still run the same speed, people will start buying into it. Whereas if you go into reps and sets, and I've heard coaches go into all sorts of detail and depth about things, and obviously what they're saying is right, but people glaze over, people lose interest in that because it's not the stuff they want to hear.
Exactly. You've got to keep the attention captured of your audience, whether it's n-1 or n=1, or n=10. Like, as soon as you lose interest and engagement, you've got an uphill battle, really. Yeah. I've often found, coming at it from keeping you training point of view and minimising your risk of injury point of view, a much better approach than this is going to make you perform better. Because ultimately obviously we all know it will, but selling it to them as this is going to be able to keep you on your bike for longer, it's be able to keep you in the water for longer, it's to be able to get you to go further when you're doing your long runs, etc. It's going to keep you training rather than it will get you better. So there's two different approaches you've got there. But I think everyone's in the same boat there, whether they're an S&C coach or a specific skill or tactical specific coach. Like it's never easy, but everyone's different, aren't they? So sometimes it's easier than others.
I think the other thing that people worry about, especially with endurance sport, obviously when dealing with contact sports and others, it's not so much of a problem. But when you're looking at runners and cyclists, not so much for swimmers, but certainly runners and cyclists, they worry about putting on muscle.
Yeah. And
it's amazing how many people, I don't want to sound like I'm being sexist or stereotypical, but the whole female magazines side of things push such a narrative as well, and we know it's not true, but it's still overcoming that, because you'll have somebody who says Karen Down, my club, tells me that not to do weights because I will get really big and bulky and it'll make it harder for me going uphill. And there's so much misinformation out there that's just it's difficult to get around, and it's making the information that we put out, whether it is S&C related or whether it's swim related or whether it's run related, it's making it easily digestible but still accurate.
Yeah, I think it's exactly. I mean, it has to be accurate. It has to do what it says it's going to do, but it needs to just be kept simple. I think so many things today with the way the world is and the way social media almost insists people need to be portrayed. It makes things unnecessarily complicated, and it causes half the problem really, because that's where most doubts come from. It's just lots of bullshit from lots of other sources when it's not actually, half of those things are never really true anyway.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean we could talk about this forever, but yeah, I know what you mean, and you've got to be able to win the person before you can win the battle really, and it's difficult.
Big personal contact, doesn't it? Personal relationships.
Well, I talk about this to all my guests, and it's a fundamental aspect of just universal human connection, but being the ability and the skill to be able to communicate effectively is half the battle, and that's a forever ongoing thing people can develop. But it's something that you definitely need to be able to do the basics of before you can really start any process.
Yeah, and just being able to listen.
Exactly. So, just moving on, what would you say that you can come at this from as an athlete, as a coach, or both? What would you say the most valuable things that you've learned are to date?
The first thing I'd say is that things take time. It doesn't matter whether you're a coach or an athlete, and I've seen it from both sides. You can't rush anything. It doesn't matter how much you want something. Everything you want takes time to develop. And when I was about just over 5 years ago, I wrecked my foot in a pothole running, and I did exactly what I tell athletes not to do. Once my ankle was healthy and stable to run on, I panicked because I had a reasonably big competition in the summer that I was working towards, and gave myself a stress fracture because I panicked. And I guess that's one of the things that I can do as a coach is I can draw on various different
experiences.
Yeah, experiences. Thank you. Various different experiences, and just say, look, I've been there. I know what it's like to be injured, and or I've been trying to build speed, or I've been trying to build better power and strength, or learn a skill. I learned to row for a couple of years, which was great fun, and it was amazing. It was different being part of a team, but I wanted to be good at it straight away because I had the power for it, I had the endurance, I had the engine, but the skill quality just wasn't there to match it. And it's given me a real good patient outlook on things, and being able to pass that on is quite a useful skill. I think the other thing that I've really taken probably more recently from life as much as being an athlete and a coach is just to do things with purpose, and know why you're doing something, but apply real positive purpose, positive intent to what you do. It's very easy to just go in the gym or go out for a run or go out for a swim and just swim or just go do. And sometimes you need that mental space, and sometimes you need to just escape from things. But to improve on things or to get the best out of things, there has to be a real positive intent. That's just in life, and the relationships you build, or whether that's going and get the most out of your training session you do or your work. I think that's a real thing that I've learned. I suppose I've known it in training and in racing and from a coaching point of view, but from a life point of view, I think it makes a big difference as well. And I think that's something that people forget, that training is a part of life, and I guess I've isolated that from life as well, in some cases. And then I suppose the other thing is that at the end of the day, sport is supposed to be fun. We can all get really stuck in our sport and stuck in trying to achieve something. And actually, there's so much more to life outside of that, much as we may or may not choose to admit it. And again, I raced in Slovenia. I did the European Masters swimming in Slovenia last September, and I got a real mix of results. And I came back, and it took me a couple of weeks to realise that I was really not very happy with how I'd got on. And then I had to remember that actually part of the reason for wanting to go out and race out there was to go and explore and go and have a bit of an adventure and see some amazing parts of the country, which I did, and I had an amazing time, and I got to kayak on some gorgeous lakes and walk in and see some amazing views, and it just makes the sport feel less pressured. You know, most of us aren't getting paid to compete at a high level, and some of the guys that I'm coaching are panicking about trying to race better and better and better, and forgetting they've got families or they've got friends and a social life. And we all do it. Like I say, I've done it myself and done it recently. And yeah, there's more to life. You know, it's easy to say don't stress the sport, don't stress on all of that, but at the same time, it's finding your outlets away from the sport so you can still enjoy it, I think.
I can agree more, John, to be honest, and I think it's all about finding that balance, isn't it? And you know, between trying your best and taking it seriously, but also being realistic. Is that's not the only thing in life. You know, you've got to look after yourself, your health, your well-being. And, you know, there are other people which are important in your life and rely on you too, with friends, family, little ones, etc. That need to be equally as much of a priority, if not more. So it is hard finding the balance. I knew, as you know, I used to can wakeboard a lot when I was younger and went to a few different European competitions, and I was frustrated how slowly I was progressing, and then one competition in Sweden led me to push myself beyond my capabilities, which resulted in me being in intensive care for a week, because I just wasn't really thinking and tried to do something I'd never managed to do before, hoping there would be a one-off chance of success, but really was just a stupid thing to do. And that's really stuck with me forever. And I do approach things a little bit differently now. And I just think also the older you get, the wiser you are, the more that you are around other people who've got probably more experience than you. You just learn more, and it does shape your approach to things.
It does. And I think it's a shame when you need to get to a point like that where you put yourself in hospital for you to actually realise that. Yeah,
I know. It was a silly thing to do. It was all for the right reasons. But I just went about it the wrong way, and if I approached it differently, I think it could have been more successful and slightly less severe. But you learn from it. I think that alludes really quite nicely to like the next question. So, like many people, we all have our heroes, our mentors. Who would you say are your top influences, or your top mentors have been along your involvement with triathlon?
One of the biggest influences, probably my old swim coach from as an age group swimmer, so up until 18, Kevin. Kevin's now coaching swimming still in East London. I'm not entirely sure which club he is coaching at, but his philosophy on swim coaching and swim body positioning and body control has stood with me for, I suppose 16 years since then, because it really opened my eyes to how, thinking back on it when I was started coaching myself properly, it really opened my eyes to how everything interconnects. I did an engineering degree, and actually linking the two together and realising that kind of everything works with these engineering principles really made a difference to me. And I think it makes sense when I'm able to then explain it to people that way as well, because everyone reads about, you should do all these core exercises, whether you're a swimmer, biker, runner, whether you're a rugby player, whatever, and actually being able to incorporate that into swimming and into running as well makes a difference, because you read all these articles about doing such things, whether it's strength training or training and stuff, but nobody ever really explains how it relates into the sport you do. And I guess that comes back to being able to educate people on why they should be doing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, Kevin is one of the biggest influences. I mean, my parents obviously are, and I'm sure there's several people who would state that, but my parents have obviously been amongst the biggest influences on my life. Although I'm not sure that I would have taken the jump to coach full time for myself. My dad is a lot more conservative and balanced than I am, but obviously there's still a good work ethic in me, and gave me a lot of different opportunities to be able to do that, the stuff I enjoy, and they've always been a good sounding board as well for things I do. And then I guess I take a lot of influence from various coaches around the world, because we all learn from other people, and it's not just learning from the big names, but I guess there's a couple. There's Dan Bullock, who's a swim coach in London, runs business swim for Tri, and there's a guy called Matt Fitzgerald in the States that I follow up the stuff from, and I mean they're just two of many. I was very fortunate when I was a swimmer to swim with a coach, a US Olympic coach, Dick Thorberg. And again, all of them have different styles of coaching, and I guess that's something that I've learned. You've got to be adaptable, but they were also good at being able to explain things and have different outlooks on them. I think that's just been a real positive lesson to learn.
Well, no, thanks for sharing that. It's always very useful or interesting to hear who other people's influences are. All of the information we discuss will be in the show notes for anyone to follow up on. So I'll try and put some of those links of those people in for people to chase.
Yes.
So if you wanted to find out more information about something, maybe something that you already know and you want to find out more information, or about something that you don't know, what are your kind of top resources, what are your top go-tos to try and find out more?
So I read an endurance magazine, or endurance e-zine, I suppose, because they used to have a hard copy, but it's now all online, called Peak Performance. I've written for them on a couple of occasions, which was great fun, but it's all very scientifically based as well. So it might put some proper theory behind maybe anecdotal coaching points and ideas that you might read in magazines or online or whatever. Another Swim Science, again, it's another website, but again, both sites speak to my engineering background, which is great. Yeah. But obviously Swim Science is very swim specific, whereas the Peak Performance covers all endurance sports, and both, I suppose, again, the whole Peak Performance side of things is useful from my point of view, and I guess alludes back to what I was saying earlier about things crossing over from sport to sport. And I think there's a lot of things that various different individual sports coaches can take from other sports. And I think more and more people are starting to learn and start to do. Otherwise, it's picking stuff up from all over the place, really. There's probably not a third primary resource. Sure. But the general magazines give you ideas. So something like 220 Triathlon or Triathlete magazine, which is an American one, and I read Fit Pro magazine a little bit as well, which again gives ideas and thoughts, and then kind of try and research a little bit deeper into those things online. Cool,
awesome. Well, thanks for sharing those. So this next question is always a question that I find most guests don't like to answer, because I try and specifically make them choose 3, and there's probably about 30 that they want to give examples of, which I'm sure you know what's coming. But what would you say your top 3 sports performance exercises and or drills are that you go to exercises to help improve people, in terms of triathlon performance?
Okay, so the first one is a really easy one. Obviously, my background is very much swim related before coming into running and a triathlon. This is a drill that my old coach Kevin got us to do when I was 13, 14, 15, and it relates to good body posture and control in the water. It's known as a dead man flow, and the idea is to get your body, just get used to be aware of your body in the water and where it sits. In an ideal world, when you're swimming, you want to have the whole of your body along the surface of the water. And some people will use a pull buoy, a float to put between your legs to keep your legs as high as possible, which is good from a training point of view because you can isolate the arms. It mimics the position you're in a wetsuit, but from my point of view as a technical coach, I'd like to see people work on having better body positions so that they can benefit from a wetsuit or a pull buoy rather than to rely on it.
Yeah.
So during this dead man flow, the idea is that you take a lung full of air and then just lie face down in the water and let everything relax. So let your arms relax, relax, let your legs relax. And just see how your body sits naturally. Hold your breath for 5 to 10 seconds and then stand up, put your head up or whatever. And what you'll find with most people is that because you've got air in your lungs, your body stays nice and buoyant, but your legs being along with your lungs and being muscular, muscle weighs more than water, weighs more dense than water, your legs will sink down. So you'll find the position that I would refer to as the hunchback position. I think for reasonably obvious reasons, backs hunched over. And then you would repeat the drill, but instead of being completely relaxed, you would get the athlete in the water, or yourself if you were trying it out yourself, do 3 things. You would lengthen your neck, so you pull your ears away from your shoulders, and tuck your chin down, so you'd be looking down at the bottom. The second thing you would do is you'd lift your arms up towards the surface out in front of you, so your ears would be between your biceps, or close to, depending on shoulder mobility. And then the third thing you'd get them to do is engage the core, so pull your belly button towards the spine, squeeze your bum muscles, engage your hamstrings a little bit. And what you'll tend to find, what you should find from most people, is that legs will start to float up towards the surface. Some people will be more buoyant than others, some people will be able to find that position a little bit easier than others. But the general idea is that by creating that body tension and balancing over the top of the lungs, you can actually bring the legs up to the surface, regardless of how big somebody is. So I'm 90 kilos, my legs are fairly muscular, I'm fairly heavy, but I can flow perfectly fine in the water because I understand how my body works. And obviously, that's not necessarily the case for most people being in the water. So it shouldn't be a case of how heavy you are or how muscular you are, and people can't do it at all. But you can get the idea across, and so that's quite good, because then you can get someone to start kicking the legs gently, and they'll start moving forward with the barest minimum effort. And that's why I think it's a real, that's got to be my top exercise or drill to get someone doing, because I can get someone to do that as a complete beginner, or someone who's quite an experienced swimmer who is dragging themselves through the water. Probably quite a long-winded explanation, but
that's fantastic, really interesting. I'm going to be trying that myself next week when I'm back in the pool.
You'll have to take a video and send it to me.
Yeah, you might. If I do that, mate, it might become very popular very quickly for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. The next performance exercise or drill, I get people to do a lot. When I'm doing a lot of run coaching, I get people to do lots of single leg balancing, and actually just getting people to understand where their centre of gravity is, and being able to use the core muscles again to balance things rather than their lower limbs. And again, I think it's a really simple drill, I think, but it's really effective because you can then get people closing their eyes and whatever, and any progressions from that, because it's such a simple drill. People are used to looking at that. People are the people listening to this podcast are probably going to be quite experienced athletes. You look at a drill like that and think it's quite simple, but so many runners, and even very good runners, can barely balance on one leg, or can only just about hold a balance on one leg without wobbling around. And I like it as a drill because it's basic. You can do it at any point, any time, You can do it I get people doing it when they're doing the teeth or when they're washing up or cooking or whatever. And obviously it then really has an effect on reducing injury and increasing power and everything else. So it's you can add extra things in, like getting people to close their eyes or adding a knee bend or whatever it is. But I really like that because it can affect everybody.
I find single leg work so underrated, and
yes.
It's fantastic, especially obviously because I'm working now with over 15 different sports really on a weekly basis. So it's just chaos management for me. But I find like my strongest athletes are rugby players, rowers, and probably decathletes.
Yeah.
They as soon as they can squat and deadlift, all Olympic lift all day long, in triple figures. But as soon as you put them on a single leg, they're like a drunk flamingo. They just find it very challenging. And often any single leg exercise, I'd always categorise mine as a step up, a split squat, and a single leg squat. Personally would put a lunge in a different category. But when you get them particularly doing single leg squats, there's very very unlikely to ever have to need any additional load.
Yes.
I always find body weight's always enough, and just changing the challenge of onto a box or onto a 2A box or on a box, or using plates, dumbbells, kettlebells in different positions is always a fantastic exercise.
Yeah, totally.
Have you got one that possibly we could look to approach from a cycling point of view, maybe?
Yeah. So I've got the cycling side of things is a little bit more interesting, but I think I'd cross that over into the swimming as well. So there's a couple of things that I would do from a cycling point of view. One is being able to control the bike super slow. And that's what I say, there's a crossover there with the swimming, because a lot of people just rely on being strong and powerful on a bike rather than actually being able, or I say lots of people doing triathlon because they just view the idea that they want to go as fast as possible, a little bit longer, and it's just focusing on endurance. But the ability to ride slow is almost harder, I think, than being able to ride fast, because when you want to ride fast, all you do is push the pedals around harder and faster. And it's, to a certain extent, people do that in the water as well. They want to go faster and harder in the water, so they move their arms, move their legs, and they go quicker. But actually, in both cases, there's a lot of lost effort, a lot of lost energy, because they're not controlling. So if you get someone to cycle as slow as possible, then it's actually harder, because you have to concentrate, you have to balance, you have to really work to keep the bike right. And similarly in the water. So that would be my one single bike skill or drill to do. If you did another one that people can actually practice, it would be to do some high cadence drills, because again, it's all about keeping your pedal stroke smooth and keeping your body smooth on the bike without bouncing around, because again, losing energy and losing the power that you're putting down.
That's really interesting, John. It's something that I've never heard about before or come across. Just a kind of side question about that. So obviously, I'm not getting any younger, and I've got a lot of scars, war wounds, and old injuries from rugby and other extreme sports over the past 15 years. So I've started doing less running and more cycling, just for my general fitness. So one thing I've started doing more is a lot of watt bike, purely from a time efficiency point of view. This is a twofold question. Do you use the watt bike much? And if you do, are there any tests that you can do on the watt bike you find useful as a coach that you can use to translate or complement any on-road prescription?
So yes, I mean the watt bike's a great bit of kit actually. I don't have one myself, don't have access to one myself, but I have a power meter for my bike. So it does exactly the same thing. So on my turbo trainer, my bike's mixed up to a turbo trainer, and I can just work on power, which is exactly how a watt bike works. And it gives you a readout in the same way you might get on a row machine, an erg. So it's a more accurate read of the power or what you're putting out than using heart rate, because it's absolute, power is absolute, assuming it's calibrated correctly, obviously. So the way to do a test, well, there's two different tests you can do. One is more of, I suppose, the old school accepted way of doing things. There's more up-to-date tests that you can do these days, but the easiest test is one to do 20 minutes warm up and then do 20 minutes as hard as you can and take your average power for that time. And then what you would do is you'd multiply that by 0.95, between 0.9 and 0.95, depending on which text you read, and that would give you your FTP, or your functional training power, functional threshold power. So that's what you should theoretically be able to put out for an hour and then keel over and fall off if you like. That is, like, if you're planning on doing steady rides, if you've got access to power on your road bike, or you're planning on sitting on a watt bike for more than an hour, most of your ride will be considerably lower effort than that. So let's say your FTP is 200 watts, which is fairly achievable for most normal people, I would say. You might do some efforts at that level. That should be sort of 7.5 out of 10 on an RPE scale. But so most of your riding will be maybe 150, 160 watts. But you might do efforts at 220, 230 watts, or if you're doing maximum all-out efforts for maybe 60 seconds, you might be trying to hit 260, 270, maybe 300 watts for 60 seconds. And that will then, in the same way you do high-intensity intervals or treadmill intervals, that will then reflect on what you're able to do on the road. And it's the sort of test you might do once every 8 to 12 weeks. It's so subjective, because when you've got triathlon, you've got swimming, biking and running, and there's obviously only so much you can improve on at any one time in any one of the three. Yeah. And again, it comes down to that balance, that if you're improving your running or you're improving your swimming, everything else will probably stay the same. It probably shouldn't decrease, but it's not necessarily all going to improve and increase at the same time. And if you've not been on the bike and you've not done so much training more recently, actually you might find as you're training you'll lose a little bit of weight, so those watts per kilo might go up. Which is always nice as well. And especially then if you're riding on the road and going uphill, that makes a difference. That's not necessarily to say that everybody does need to think about losing weight, and I think there's too much. One of the things you find is there's too much of an emphasis on trying to lose weight in endurance sport. And again, I don't know whether that's something you come across at all, but there's a really big emphasis on it, rather than people trying to maintain their weight and stay healthy and stay strong and improve their power for the same weight.
I've come across that belief in some athletes, but it comes back to what we discussed earlier. It's just because they've read something somewhere or been told something by someone, which is just complete crap, and unfortunately they've chosen to believe it. So I just think that's where people who do have influences over athletes, especially young athletes, they have a responsibility to make sure they're being careful what they say, because sometimes people can absorb things, especially young athletes, which they think are golden, coming from an older person who's experienced with different things, and they they're like sponges, aren't they? They just absorb things sometimes that they shouldn't do. It's something I've experienced. I found that when I was working in tennis for 4 years, in the 2008-2012 Olympic cycle, young female tennis players were a lot more aware of or anxious about, as we said, strength training, weight management, and calorie intake. That was a big problem, and it was something that you had to work very closely with them to just to explain. It's all a balance. You've got to put back in what you're burning off, and if you're doing more, you've got to eat more. If you're doing less, then maybe eat a bit less, but don't always think that.
Don't stress it.
Calories are bad, exactly. It's I mean, it's a completely different topic we could discuss forever, but
Yeah, to be honest, you'd want someone who's more expert in it than I am. I wouldn't profess or pretend to know much about it because it's not my area of expertise. But I do see it, and I do get people asking about it. And I've done a few nutrition workshops. I've done a few nutrition, can't really call them qualifications, certainly courses. But I would only ever kind of give loose recommendations, and with that stipulation that it's a loose recommendation, it's not a prescription of eating.
yeah, advise rather than prescribe, I always say.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, especially when it comes to something that you don't know too much about. It's okay to admit that,
Yes.
and it's responsible of you to refer someone to an expert.
Exactly.
People aren't going to judge you for saying I don't know, but I know someone who does, and
Yes.
I think it's something that some people don't like to admit, but for the right reasons, because they want to provide a service and be able to help as much as possible. But you're actually going to help someone more by being honest with them, aren't you?
Absolutely, and you'll get more respect for being able to point someone in the right direction rather than trying to fudge an answer that doesn't necessarily work.
Exactly. So, John, just coming into the last couple of questions, we've discussed technology that you use from a cycling point of view to test yourself and to track your training progress.
Yeah.
Are there any other pieces of technology that you use for any other aspect of your coaching practice or your competition practice at all that you find useful?
So the biggest bit that I use for both from a coach and a training point of view is Training Peak. It's a website, it's a training guide website, and it's a worldwide site. They're based in Boulder, Colorado, where all the best endurance athletes and coaches seem to be, and it's just really usable. It's really easy to use. I was using a platform that was a guy in Bristol that I know, which was really nice to start with, but training has nothing else, and it's just easy and it's just simple, and because it's globally accepted, I've got a couple of guys who are from outside the UK, and it just means that it's all uniform, but also from a training point of view, I hope that this is not new to the coaches that see listening to this, or even athletes that listen to this, but find there's so many athletes who have never really tracked their training before for any particular reason, which is fair enough if you're fairly new to sport and have just been enjoying it. But if you're looking to perform and looking to improve your performance, it's imperative to know what you've been doing. And if you find things are going well, you've then got a record of why things are going well, training-wise, and sleep and food, and whether you're drinking enough. And equally, if things are going poorly or badly, or you're getting ill, then you can look back on things and go, okay, well, you can pinpoint why that's, or try and repeat the same set of training again. As an athlete myself, I stopped swimming effectively at 20, whatever, way through from 12, 13 through 20, and this is in the pre-technological ages. I had a page to UA4 diary, which I would write my whole swim sets in with splits, the food that I had before sessions, and how much sleep I had, and how I felt. If I was ill, you could see whether it was because I'd been overtraining, and my coach was quite intuitive as well. He'd say, you look tired, you look good, we're going to go easy today, or stop being lazy, get your arms in gear, work harder. But if I was ill, then we'd look at my program and look at what I'd done and be able to refer back to it. And I think a lot of people think they're trying to work hard, don't necessarily have that metric to look at things.
It's always training harder is always a default thought, isn't it? I think, especially from endurance athletes, I find, because they're very tough-minded. But it's not necessarily about that. It's usually about training smarter.
Yes.
And having that technology available and that data available does allow you to do that. In the last year, I've started using heart rate variability a lot more.
Yeah, that's right. It really is. I don't necessarily fully understand it. I've looked at it a little bit.
It's incredibly useful, and the one app I would definitely recommend is iThlete, which is
Okay.
ITHLETE, and
Yep.
they have an incredibly easy to use but very very accurate heart rate variability platform where you can just track it daily, and
Yes.
it just gives you a personalised score of where you're
Yep.
at, and recommendations of whether you should do more, whether you should do less. If you're peaking, it'll help you coach you of how to peak and when to kind of taper. It's
Yep.
really really good. So I'll put that in the show notes, but highly recommend it. Just the last question about technology: do you use any kind of heart rate monitors or smartwatches for when you do any training runs or any events?
I don't wear a watch when I race at all, personally.
Yeah,
Primarily because I find it distracting.
yeah,
I have a cheap Epson run watch, which I use for running, just more to look at afterwards, or if I'm doing intervals on the road, just to use as an alarm. Or if I'm on the bike, I use Strava on my phone. A lot of endurance athletes, a lot of triathletes will use a Garmin or TomTom watch of some description, which are, they're great and they're really useful. It annoys me as a coach watching people pressing watches on the side in the pool, and I suppose it annoys me partly because people need to be able to learn to count their own lengths.
yeah.
And you don't need to know your exact splits for every 100 of an aerobic set or every 400 of an aerobic set. Like in a test set, I always press the stop button so that you've got an accurate time. But throughout a session, you don't need to know the exact splits of 75 when you're doing 25 drill, 25 kick, and then 25 swim. And I think people spend more time looking at their watches whilst they're swimming or running than they do to concentrate on what they're doing.
I completely agree. I think it's useful to have data available to you, but I found it's more useful to look at the end
Yes.
rather than during. I mean, I use velocity-based training a lot with
Yes.
different power sessions with different athletes, and that does give the push band particularly does give real-time feedback, which is what I think why it's so good, and
Yes.
that is very useful. But yeah, as you say, it just doesn't want to become a distraction, does it? It wants to become a help and I suppose an accessory source rather than a distraction.
Yeah, it comes back to that thing about training mindfully and training with intent, training with purpose, and actually is looking at your watch, is training with your watch, is that adding to that purpose or is it detracting?
Exactly. No, I couldn't agree more. So, John, final couple of questions because I'm conscious of the time, and I've got to go and do a strength session with the rowers soon. So I need to disappear across the other side of the river. But what would you say your top pieces of advice would be in life, exercise, and or sport to people who are thinking about getting into triathlon, just got into triathlon, or fairly established in triathlon?
As I said it already, I suppose the first would be to enjoy it. Highly unlikely that any of us will get paid for doing training and racing in triathlon or in sport. So if you're not enjoying it, why are you doing it? That was always drummed into me as a swimmer when I was younger, and is something that I'm really trying to remember myself as an athlete, and it's something I try and remember as a coach. Try and make the sessions fun and enjoyable for the athletes. The second piece of advice, and again, I think this is something that I've learned as much in the last year in life as much as anything else, but it's just know why you're doing things and do it positively. It's very easy to do or to not do things because you're scared of something or worried about something, and that then boils it down into sport. If you're going to get the best out of the training time that you have, and some people have far less time than train with that positive intent. Make sure you know what you're doing and why you're doing it so that you get the most out of it.
Awesome. Fantastic. So if people wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way of getting hold of you?
Okay, so my website is try-coaching.co.uk, and that has contact forms on it as well, and it has some of the the articles that I've written for magazines on there, and various blog bits if people are interested in sort of some tips on swimming and running and technique improvement. And then on social media, I'm at try_coaching on both Twitter and Instagram.
Fantastic. Well, I'll make sure I put all those links in the show notes.
Cool.
Stay on the line, but I'm going to, after I've stopped the recording, but I just wanted to say thanks very much for your time. I've really enjoyed talking to you. It was great just catching up with you in general after a few years, and I think the last time we did catch up was at Dan Baker's workshop, wasn't it? So it's always nice to revisit how people are getting on and what they're doing and stuff.
Well, yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure, and I love talking and love listening to people that have far more expertise and experience than I do as well, and that includes yourself. And obviously having come together years ago, it's we've both gone in kind of different directions, and then come back towards the same sort of area.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again, and speak to you soon.
Yeah, speak to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the 13th episode. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please leave us a rating and/or review on whichever platform you're listening on. Please check out our website www.extremesportsperformance.com. On our media page we have weekly blogs that include Thought of the Week, Exercise of the Week, Recipe of the Week and Training Song of the Week. Each month's collection gets compiled into our monthly newsletter along with company service and store updates. You can sign up for free to receive this via our subscribe page. Our online store consists of training programs, online and in-person coaching, nutrition plans, toolbox and interactive training systems. Please follow us on our social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. Links to these can be found at the bottom of every page on our website or via any search engine. That's all for now. Until next time, take care.